take the only person who knows what's going on in the school off the board. The other people are all volunteers. They can be shop assistants or stay-at-home mums or shoe sellers. They don't have to have anything to do with education. They just have a kid at the school generally. And you're wanting to take the principal out of the mix. It sounds like a nutty recipe.
I presume someone said, "Oh, it's governance. It's a conflict of interest." And I guess I had that reaction too. I was like, "Oh, that seems a bit odd, being the employer and the employee." But I think you're right. I agree with Alexia. I mean, it just seems like there's a problem. There's no problem here that they're having to solve. They just, I don't know.
I suppose it might stop a principal dominating the board if the board felt it was being dominated.
One person, one vote.
But that will happen anyway. I mean, they don't. That's exactly right. I mean, it's only because they know everything, isn't it? Not because they've got a vote.
No, they're the person with their finger on the pulse of the school, and it's all about the school, surely.
Yeah, a difficult argument
proves
to...
the problem, eh?
Yeah.
Not convinced.
A difficult argument to immediately rebut. All right, do you understand why some schools won't seem to let children stay warm? Another RNZ story, dozens of parents calling for long pants to be part of the uniform at Awaroa Primary School in Auckland after being told they're too expensive. Boys and girls can't wear track pants or trousers in winter because they are not an option. Jamie Travis raised the issue with the Board of Trustees, was told it would be too expensive, and other schools in the area all stuck with shorts, and the Board of Trustees hasn't commented further.
Well, this is exactly why the principal should stay on the board, and it's a load of rubbish. Primary schools do not have to have uniforms. They can just snap their fingers and say you can wear your own pants to school. What's wrong with that?
Well, tons of schools... Sorry,
I had to laugh at this. Sorry, well, I just had to laugh at this from a Dunedin point of view, eh? It's just hilarious. I mean, I thought, for one thing, it's too hot in Auckland, isn't it, to wear shorts, to wear pants anytime?
Nearly.
Nearly. But the photos in the news stories were hilarious too. The kids like huddling up with their shorts on, and it was just a tearjerker, isn't it?
It's only 12 degrees.
It's only 12 degrees, yeah. I know. My son won't even wear pants, even down in Dunedin. He won't wear them. He just wears shorts all the time, all year round.
My son bet a mate that he could get through the whole winter without wearing a school jumper and got collected the $10 at the end of the year.
There you go. But I do think, of course, you should have the option, shouldn't you? Because there are kids who feel the cold and there are kids who don't, right?
But there are tons of schools all around New Zealand which prescribe what the exact uniform will be, and also proscribe items of clothing like puffer jackets, which would let kids be warm.
True. I just couldn't believe they wouldn't have a long pant option. But there you go.
The long pant option.
Someone from Nelson is running the show, clearly.
Well, it can be quite generic. You don't have to have a logoed flash pair of pants available. You can just get what everybody else is getting and send the kids off if they want some,
The BBC is talking up Melania Trump's role in persuading Donald Trump to sign his executive order ending the policy of family separations on the Mexican border. So Melania toured a children's detention centre. Quote, she has made herself a central figure, calling publicly for a country that governs with heart, which was seen as a criticism of her husband's zero-tolerance policy. Do we give Melania credit where it's due? Or are you a bit more cynical about why she went down?
I think
I think she's definitely... So you go.
A Truman Show episode, and I'm waiting to wake up for it. It's so ridiculous that she's the evil, the white knight to the evil twin.
What about her jacket?
I thought it was totally believable.
What about her jacket with "I really don't care"?
I don't think she even thought about it. I think she just thought, I got sass. I got. I'm just going to put it on. I don't care. She probably didn't even think what it said until she got on the plane and saw the photos. Wow.
Very good. Thank you all for your comments. Thank you both for your comments today, and thank you all for listening. Ian Telfer, Alexia Russell on the panel.
Thanks.
Nice to see you both. And Checkpoint with John Campbell coming right up.
Tō te marai, hoa mai, hei kōrero kei te haere, hei kaupapa kei te karawhiua. Tonight on Checkpoint, a nasty old scare and then a very safe landing for an Air New Zealand-owned Mount Cook Airlines flight at Napier Airport. We hear from a witness and our reporter is there live. The Prime Miniature, hat tip to Twitter, and the Prime Minister spend night 2 in Auckland Airport. Part 2 of our look inside the youth justice residence where some of the country's most high risk and at risk 14 to 17-year-olds are sent to be made safe. Extraordinary feedback to that story last night. The second part coming up. And an historic day for thousands of mental health and addiction workers who are getting a pay rise in the footsteps of care and support staff. Checkpoint on a Friday night. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back with all of that after Paul with the news.
RNZ News at 5. No mai, haere mai, good afternoon. I'm Paul Brennan. An Air New Zealand passenger plane made an emergency landing at Napier Airport this afternoon after what appears to have been a major mechanical problem. A passenger has told RNZ that 5 minutes after the plane took off from Napier, bound for Auckland, loud noises were heard and the plane started shuddering. Other passengers saw flames coming out of the left engine. A man who lives near the airport says emergency services rushed to the scene.
Heaps of ambulances and police and fire engines went rushing over to the airport, but I've seen a little bit of smoke coming up.
The plane landed safely with an estimated 50 people on board and is now being inspected by engineers. Hundreds of New Zealand women say they're suffering from what they call breast implant illness. There's been growing concern internationally about symptoms linked to the implants. 44,000 women have joined a worldwide Facebook support group and about 2,000 have joined one for New Zealand and Australia. Auckland woman Micaiah Simmons says she had her implants in for 10 years before having them removed in 2016.
Anxiety, heart palpitations, fatigue, like I was really, really exhausted all the time, which was unusual for me because I was used to working really long hours, memory loss and like brain fog.
Micaiah Simmons says her symptoms slowly disappeared once the implants were out. Jacinda Ardern's parents say they've been in frequent contact with their daughter since the birth of her first child 24 hours ago. Mr Ardern says he's been getting texts from his daughters in Auckland City Hospital, or from his daughter in Auckland City Hospital, and his wife Laurel has spoken to her on the phone several times. He says the new parents are feeling comfortable and happy and proud of their beautiful baby girl.
A very active baby. That kept her awake during the night. All of the things that parents get to experience. So Jacinda also gets to experience that. I'm sure that it'll be, as time goes on, they'll get more used to the effort that it takes to raise a child.
Ross Ardern. In a social media post today, the Prime Minister thanked her midwife for her incredible work and for making her macaroni and cheese, which she was craving. She'll be spending another night in hospital tonight and is expected to go home at some time over the weekend. The Health Minister says mental health and addiction workers should have been included in last year's historic pay equity deal for care and support workers in the first place. David Clark says that because of this, the pay rise they've now been given will be backdated to last July. Nearly half of the 5,000 workers who qualify for the rise will get an increase of $3 an hour to $120 a week before tax, and another 20% will get $5 an hour more. That means an extra $200 gross for a 40-hour week.
These people often support New Zealanders when they're the most vulnerable, and they deserve a fair go, and I'm proud to be a part of a government that has delivered on that.
The Health Minister, David Clark. A 12-year-old is in a critical condition in hospital after a South Auckland police pursuit that ended in a crash. The police say they tried to stop the vehicle at about 8 o'clock this morning, believing it may have been linked to a series of burglaries overnight. They say when it failed to stop, officers followed it until it crashed into a stationary car in rush hour traffic at the intersection of Redoubt Road and Goodwood Drive in Manukau. A 16-year-old girl has been charged with unlawfully taking a vehicle, aggravated failing to stop and reckless driving. Two 17-year-old girls have also been charged with unlawfully getting into a motor vehicle, while a 12-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl have been referred to youth aid. The wife of the Israeli Prime Minister has been charged with aggravated fraud and breach of trust. The Justice Ministry says 59-year-old Sarah Netanyahu misused more than $100,000 of official funds for catering services at the Prime Minister's residence in Jerusalem. Regulations prohibit her from buying in meals from restaurants while a cook is employed at the residence. Mrs. Netanyahu denies any wrongdoing. A new study has found that there are some surprising upsides to online trolling. Trolls, who shouldn't be confused with online bullies, are anonymous internet mischief makers. Ekant Veer of Canterbury University says many of them have become internet celebrities.
We found quite a few celebrity trolls, people who troll and were followed by a bunch of fans who would encourage them and egg them on and give them ideas for the next target and everything else like this. And some of those trolls actually ended up getting monetized.
Ekant Veer says the study found many companies have paid to have someone troll their page for publicity. It's 5 minutes past 5. Sport now. The Kiwis have named 7 debutants in their squad for Sunday's one-off rugby league test against England in Denver. New coach Michael Maguire says it's a unique situation with several experienced test players missing, but he's confident the youthful side, which has plenty of NRL experience, will perform well.
As much as they're debuting these guys, they've all played at the top level at NRL now, so they know obviously what's required, but it's another step up. So it gives these guys a moment in time to take their opportunities for the Kiwi jersey.
Michael Maguire there. The former New Zealand cricket captain Brendan McCullum has revealed he was investigated for doping after returning a failed urine sample while playing in the Indian Premier League 2 years ago. Stuff reports McCullum, who suffers from asthma, exceeded the maximum allowable dose of the drug salbutamol after using an inhaler to deal with particularly poor air quality in New Delhi ahead of a match in April 2016. After several months collecting medical data, seeking testimony from medical staff and gathering information on what triggered the asthma attack, McCullum was retroactively granted a therapeutic use exemption, which avoided any ban. The New Zealand cyclist Jack Bauer has been confirmed in the Australian Mitchelton Scott team for next month's Tour de France. It will be his 5th Tour de France. And that's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Country Life is milking goats. Our something for the weekend involves speed cubers in Tauranga, as in Rubik's Cubes, although apparently they don't use Rubik's Cubes anymore. And there's a Sonic Tonic dedicated to elastic, so you won't be caught with your pants down. Afternoon news at 7.
I just Googled the one word, baby, and that's what came up.
I didn't even know. Oh, there you go. I think that it's really amazing that New Zealand has a Prime Minister who is unwed and a new mother, and I'm really excited to see what changes that can bring for the country.
It's fantastic news. Great. I just like the thought of it. It makes me feel happy.
Join me, Karen Hay, on Lately for the latest news, 10 p.m. weeknights on RNZ National.
Now we have the short forecast from Met Service taking us through to midnight tomorrow Saturday for Northland to Kabaddi, including Coromandel Peninsula and the Central High Country. It'll be mostly fine, with isolated showers developing about the west coast this evening, spreading elsewhere tomorrow. Bay of Plenty, fine, cloud increasing tomorrow. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, that's north of Napier, cloudy with isolated showers for the rest of today, becoming fine early tomorrow. For the rest of Hawke's Bay, also Wairarapa, Upper, Wellington, Marlborough and Nelson, it'll be fine. Buller, Westland and Fiordland, occasional showers becoming more frequent tomorrow. Canterbury and Otago, mainly fine. Areas of low cloud persisting in some inland valleys. Southland, fine spells increasing this afternoon, but areas of cloud returning for a time tomorrow morning. And for the Chatham Islands, often cloudy with a few light showers. It's nearly 8 minutes past 5.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul Brennan. Lovely to have you with us
Nice to be here. Thank you.
In the Auckland studio. Coming up later on the programme, part 2 of our look inside a youth justice residence. That's coming up, but we begin tonight in Napier, where there was a real scare this afternoon after a Mount Cook Airlines flight near capacity on a 72-seat plane was forced to return to Hawke's Bay Airport with what was reported to be a seriously impeded engine. Now, accounts vary at this stage. Air New Zealand itself has issued a written statement saying fuel burning unevenly led to the engine backfiring and I quote, the intermittently rich fuel mix resulted in short flashes being seen near the engine's exhaust. That's the airline, or the owner of the airline. Air New Zealand owns Mount Cook. An eyewitness who lives near the airport said he saw black smoke coming from the aircraft as it descended. All sorts of noises being described by people on the ground. Leslie Hamilton was at Napier Airport waiting for a flight to Wellington when she saw the flight land.
The plane looked perfectly serviceable, apart from the fact that only one propeller was going. And of course, at that point, all of the emergency vehicles came onto the tarmac as well. There were ambulances and police and fire. So, yeah, it's pretty busy up here at the moment. I'm presuming that because this lounge, it's quite a small lounge at Napier Airport, but they've told people that off that flight that they can come into the lounge because it's absolutely heaving with people at the moment. And that's great. It's great that they've done that. They've also made public service announcements telling people that have got off that particular flight, not only about their catching up as far as getting onto another flight, but they've also said if anyone is shaken or feeling that they need to talk to someone, then people are available, including the police. So they seem to be, in New Zealand, seem to be doing all the right things.
Leslie Hamilton, who was once a media secretary for Prime Minister John Key. I think our Hawke's Bay reporter, Anusha Bradley, is at the airport and joins us now live. Hi, Anusha, are you there?
I am, John. Hi.
How's it going there? Have any flights left since then? Has the airport sort of closed down or has calm resumed?
Oh, calm has definitely resumed. One flight's just taken off, actually. And look, there was a queue of people when I arrived, all lining up to change their flights. Several have already been booked. The passengers I spoke to, they're all quite philosophical about the event, actually, said that everyone on the plane was very calm. And what happened is that they took off. The plane was actually delayed because there was an engineering inspection on the engine before they left, which delayed the flight. They eventually took off, but 5 minutes into the flight, they heard some very loud misfirings, and one passenger I spoke to looked out the window. He saw red flashes coming out of the left engine. He could smell smoke was burnt, the smell of burning smoke, and the crew apparently told them that they had to shut down the left engine. Air New Zealand says that, look, this plane is equipped or designed to fly on one engine. And they've since inspected it and no damage is done. But passengers up in the air at the time said it was a bit scary, but everyone was very calm and the crew were amazing and the pilot was amazing and they felt they were in very safe hands.
Anusha, anything else you can tell us? So that plane is obviously grounded, but normal services have resumed and it's a typical sort of Friday night at Hawke's Bay Airport now, is it?
It is indeed. Yep, no, look, everyone is just rebooking their flights. The airport's quite busy. Flights are still taking off. Yeah, business as usual, it seems.
Thanks so much, Anusha. We really appreciate it. We are, of course, trying to talk to Air New Zealand about what went on. This is an interesting detail, and we've had it confirmed from a number of passengers that there were engineering checks prior to the plane leaving. Those engineering checks, were they looking at the engine that then had this incident? We don't know. Those of you who don't know this plane, I think it's the largest twin prop plane in Air New Zealand's fleet, Mount Cook Airlines plane. I think Claire Easton Farrelly and I caught one back from Palmerston North to Auckland on Friday. Flies out of Christchurch. Not into the main centres as a rule, but between the main centres and the larger regional centres. Twin prop ATR flight. No harm done. A bit scary for the passengers. Everyone's safely down. 12 minutes past 5. The baby herself is a new New Zealander like all of the other beautiful babies born in this country yesterday, but the circumstances of her birth are almost unique. For only the second time in history, an elected leader of a nation has given birth whilst in the job. As Helen Clark said on Checkpoint last night, and this is why the story is being reported globally, it sends a message to all women that you can combine a career and motherhood, including the country's top job. Mum, the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, is tonight spending her second night in Auckland City Hospital after delivering her healthy baby girl just over 24 hours ago. Her office says everyone is happy and well, a bit tired, obviously enough. Outside the hospital bubble, messages of support have been coming in from around the world. Tom Furley has more.
Welcome to our village, we won. As soon as Jacinda Ardern published those words alongside a photo holding her newborn on Instagram, that village rapidly went global. Wearing a hat knitted by a supporter, a shawl knitted by Clark Gayford's mum, with a blanket gifted by Ngāi Tahu, the Prime Minister and her daughter were welcomed by millions. Jacinda Ardern enjoyed a dinner of Marmite toast and Milo last night, and the family was moved from the 9th floor to a room in the maternity ward on the 10th floor, where Mr Gayford also spent the night. Today, nurses described the unnamed child as very alert and one hungry baby. The Prime Minister's mother, Laurel Ardern, is now a proud grandmother of 3.
Oh, I was so excited. It brought tears to my eyes. I was relieved and excited because I know how she's always wanted to have children, so I'm just thrilled to bits.
She spoke to her daughter on the phone last night and says she sounded relaxed and excited. Miss Ardern's father, Ross, says the new parents are feeling comfortable but tired, and their new granddaughter seems very alert.
A very active baby that kept her awake during the night. All of the things that parents get to experience. So Jacinda also gets to experience that along with Clark. So I'm sure that it'll be, as time goes on, they'll get more used to the effort that it takes to raise a child.
Ross Ardern says the family have all been putting in their 5 cents worth on the name, but the couple will obviously make the final choice. Meanwhile, messages of congratulations and support have been coming in today from around the world, including public tweets from the UK Prime Minister Theresa May and a private email from the Queen. The Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took to Twitter to welcome Jacinda Ardern and Clark Gayford to the wonderful world of parenting, adding a tip for his New Zealand counterpart that briefing notes made excellent bedtime stories. MP Willow Jean Prime has first-hand experience in being in Parliament with a new baby. She started at the Beehive when her child was just 7 weeks old and says it was a big learning curve.
On reflection, I think the biggest thing was, really just having an open attitude to the whole thing and knowing that it wasn't going to go perfectly every single time.
Fellow Labour MP Kiritapu Allen was also in the same boat with her little one.
Every family comes to their own chemistry about how they go about making things work, and hey, we're 10 months in now. I think we've got a bit of a flow. But yeah, look, the challenges include the travel and being away, but the important part for us, and we had an extremely strong family unit, and I can only anticipate that the support around Jacinda Clark's just going to be immeasurable.
The baby was one of 24 born yesterday at Auckland City Hospital. Outside the hospital this afternoon, a staff member told RNZ everyone was excited for her.
She's joined our team, like Mom's team, and we're all of us happy for Mom and baby girl. Of course, it's pretty cool. Baby is always cool, and hopefully they will have more babies here. It would be great, and we just only wish them all the best.
It's expected the first family will head home over the weekend. For Checkpoint, Tom Furley.
Just before we move on, our reporter Katie Scotcher is at Auckland Hospital, and we cross to Katie live. Hi Katie, it's nice to have you back with us because there was another Instagram post from the Prime Minister this afternoon. This is a very 21st century baby, isn't it?
Yes, it is indeed another Instagram post. This time, though, it was to thank her midwife, Libby. And according to the post, Libby actually made Jacinda Ardern some macaroni cheese this morning. Apparently, she was craving it yesterday. Within minutes, just like the announcement post yesterday, there were thousands of likes and comments. And I did spot one from Lord, actually, that said, OMG, #fans of Libby.
Any word on a name? OMG.
No. No word on name as of yet, although it is likely that we will find that out when the couple appear for their first interview, although when that will be is also not confirmed. But what we do know is that it will be on the 9th floor of the hospital. There will be some questions, some photo opportunities for media, and then they'll head off, and Jacinda Ardern and Clark Gayford will take their newborn baby home, and she'll be on maternity leave for 6 weeks.
Katie Scotcher live from the hospital. Thank you very much indeed. Speaking of OMG, it's an historic day for thousands of mental health and addiction workers who are getting a pay rise in the footsteps of care and support staff. There's hope it will be the boost the mental health and addiction workforce needs to finally attract and retain staff who've been moving into better paid roles amid lagging pay. Here's our political reporter, G. Garrick.
5,000 mental health and addiction support workers will be better off under the deal, which is worth more than $173 million. Nearly half will see their pay increase by more than $3 an hour, meaning they'll be $120 a week better off before tax. A further 20% of workers will get a $5 per hour boost, or an extra $200 for a 40-hour week. Health Minister David Clark says the pay rise has been too long coming for mental health and addiction support workers who do an incredibly important job.
The mental health and addiction sector is a challenging sector to work in. It requires people with real dedication, passion and care. And the sector has expressed concern that the previous settlement might end up being attractive to workers and that they might lose further workforce. So part of the real benefit for New Zealanders of this settlement is that it provides a more sustainable setting for the future to make sure that people who work in mental health and addiction can afford to pay their bills and pay what they actually deserve for their work.
A social worker and head of the Public Service Association's Mental Health Committee, Poliana Alo, says this fight has been going on for longer than most staff have been alive. She says their perseverance has finally paid off.
There are a lot of New Zealanders that are passionate about helping people in community, whether in residential or within the addiction sector. However, it was always the pay that would deter them.
Ms Alo says losing workers due to low pay is common in the sector.
We had really skilled workers apply for a position in mental health support worker role in an organisation I worked for previously. They were quite passionate about the work that we did. And however, when they found out what the pay rate was, they turned it down immediately.
The government is launching a range of projects, including the recently announced 100-bed mental health unit in the new Waikiria prison, which Dr Clark says will require a larger mental health and addiction sector.
A workforce will need to continue to be grown over time, and making sure those workers are properly paid will make that particular career more attractive.
The PSA's Pollyanna Alor thinks it will certainly help turn the tide.
I think it's quite a sweetener for the sector, and it makes me feel confident and I guess slightly at ease that the sector will now get the inflow of skilled and passionate and committed workers.
The new pay scale will be backdated to July 1st last year. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Gia Garrick.
And if you're one of the people who is affected by this, the recipient of the new pay scale, do text us 2101. We'd love to hear from you. And will it make a difference to your preparedness, your desire to stay in these fields? 2101. I really don't care. Do you? That was the controversial message on the back of a jacket worn by the US First Lady as she boarded a plane to Texas to meet families that have been separated in the latest immigration crisis. Melania Trump didn't wear the jacket when she met with the children on the border with Mexico, but there's now a considerable backlash against the First Lady. Her judgment said she was pressured. It said she was one of those who pressured her husband to back down and lift the policy requiring the children of illegal immigrants to be separated from their parents. So why the jacket? What's all of this about? Trying to work it out. Here's the ABC's Penny Timms.
It took US First Lady Melania Trump less than a minute to walk from a car and onto a waiting jet. And as Mrs Trump gracefully walked up the stairs, the wording on the back of her jacket came into view. I really don't care, do you? When she arrived in Texas, the jacket was gone, but the damage was done. That's because Mrs Trump was on an unannounced visit to an immigration centre on the Texas-Mexico border, one holding children. US President Donald Trump has tweeted that her jacket was in reference to the so-called fake news media and not to do with the trip she was taking. A spokeswoman for the First Lady says there was no hidden message. The First Lady has been vocal in her opposition to the separation of families that's come about as the result of President Trump's zero-tolerance policy, even telling officials at the immigration centre that she wants to help reunite children and parents.
I also like to ask you how I can help to these children to reunite with their families as quickly as possible.
Anita McBride was the Chief of Staff to former First Lady Laura Bush. She's told MSNBC she applauds Mrs Trump's visit to the immigration centre.
Well, it's really important that she did that. She absolutely did the right thing. She's in a unique position to do it. And I think, we saw this week really the collective voice of our nation's living first ladies on how they, each of them hold an interesting role in our country. They are, sort of the maternal moms-in-chief. And when they speak out about children, it's something that historically they've always cared about. And Mrs. Trump really wanted to shine a light and focus on, the most vulnerable victims of this state of confusion that we are all in on this policy, and that's the children.
Homeland officials estimate that in the last 6 weeks, at least 2,000 children have been separated from their parents on the southern border after entering the United States illegally. Yesterday, President Trump signed an executive order to reverse his zero-tolerance policy after worldwide condemnation. But there is still a lot of confusion about what this all means now, especially for those children already separated. Kathy Greenberg is the Director of the Centre for National Security at Fordham University's School of Law. She's speaking with Al Jazeera.
The problem right now, and it is a critical problem, is how are these 2,300 children going to be reunited with their parents? And the roadblocks to this are not necessarily legal. These children, when they come in, are supposed to be given a number. Let's assume that they are given a number. That's a number that can enable them to be tracked. The problem, it seems to be, is that the different agencies that have been involved, the Department of Homeland Security, Security, Health and Human Services, and other related agencies within their purview aren't necessarily able to share the information and haven't been sharing it as a matter of course. And so they actually have to find these children. And once they find them, they have to find their parents. For those parents who have been sent back home or deported, this is not going to be necessarily an easy task. In fact, it's going to take an awful lot of time and effort.
She says a lack of policy and procedure are making matters worse. Meanwhile, Republican leaders have today delayed a vote on an immigration bill which would fund a border wall and reduce legal migration, with more negotiations expected.
Penny Timms, the reporter there. It's 25 minutes past 5. You are with Checkpoint on Friday night, and thank you for being with us. The neighbours of farms infected with the cattle-killing disease Mycoplasma bovis will now be officially told that a nearby farm is infected. Some farmers were furious that the Ministry for Primary Industries, MPI, had refused to say if one of their neighbours had an infected farm due to the Privacy Act. But today, Biosecurity Minister Damien O'Connor said MPI would now start telling farmers if nearby properties were infected, a complete U-turn on what the government was telling farmers, well, not terribly long ago at all. Logan Church with the story.
If you've ever listened to the new Minister of Agriculture, Tim O'Connor, he has said it virtually word for word, your comments. This is just bloody stupid, is his view of it. I've had 3 legal opinions, including from the Privacy Commissioner, who says that if we name a farmer, we're in a serious breach and therefore we'll be charged with an offence.
That was MPI's head of biosecurity, Roger Smith, telling hundreds of angry and fed-up farmers in Cheviot a fortnight ago that there was no way MPI could tell them if their neighbours' farms were infected. But today, Biosecurity Minister Damien O'Connor said that had changed.
It's been one of those ongoing frustrations, both for farmers and for myself, as to the technical way through this. There's been reference to privacy issues. We've worked through those. The Privacy Commissioner has given us advice, and we're making these changes we believe are possible and perhaps should have been in place. But there's been many discussions and debates around a number of technical issues in relation to Mycoplasma bovis.
In the time since the Cheviot meeting, MPI's Roger Smith has admitted he was wrong. Damien O'Connor says the change will help farmers take appropriate steps to improve their on-farm biosecurity and reduce the risk to their own stock. Aside from alerting farmers directly, he says MPI will start publishing the NATE numbers of all affected animals on its website. This includes all animals associated with or traced from an infected property. He is also encouraging farmers with infected properties to tell their neighbours themselves.
We'll be encouraging farmers to undertake, the principles of this and trying to, be upfront and honest with any animals that they are going to ship or they indeed intend to sell.
MPI has not yet responded to a request for comment. Last week, after hearing MPI blame the Privacy Act for its inability to inform neighbours, the Privacy Commissioner took to Twitter to say there was nothing in the Act that prevented farms from being named. He subsequently took the matter up with MPI. The Commissioner today declined to be interviewed, but judging by MPI's U-turn, it appears his message has been received loud and clear. For Checkpoint, call Logan Church, Chennai.
28 minutes past 5. The glorious thing about having Paul Brennan in the studio with us tonight is that Paul is an aviation expert and enthusiast.
I think you said nut job.
Nut job, I said. Actually, I was talking to our producer. I said we've got Paul here, and he's an aviation nut job. Yeah. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Yeah.
We're delighted to have another nut job in the studio. Yeah. What can you tell us about this ATR plane that's had this issue, although it all ended well at Napier Airport?
Very safe airliner, probably the biggest selling turboprop airliner in the world at the moment, thousands out there. Sounds like a compressor stall, which is not that serious, but it can be very alarming for the passengers because it makes a very loud noise and it can bang the airplane around because it's effectively not burning fuel and it's like a car backfiring in reverse, if you like, and it's sort of firing the flame and thrust out the front instead of out the back. So obviously something wrong with the hell of a noise, yeah, and a lot of thumping because you're getting pulses of thrust and torque in the engine while it's happening. So alarming, but probably not that unsafe. These things happen. Planes designed to handle it can fly well on one engine if they have to shut it down.
And they did, I think they brought it down on just one prop. That's
Right,
my understanding, yeah.
Yeah, so
it would be even better. I mean, having you is wonderful. Having Air New Zealand would be great because they are the horse's mouth in this situation, but they don't, Air New Zealand, front less often than Elvis Presley and Lord Lucan combined, bless them.
Yeah.
And so this is not unprecedented, this kind of event.
It's rare because they're very reliable, safe engines, but it does happen. Usually you'll have it happen on a jet plane, not a turboprop, which is a turbine driving a propeller. Jet plane, obviously, a different layout. It's more common in those and can be even worse sounding and a lot more thrust pulsing in that situation. But I would say it would have been alarming. And it would have got everyone's attention.
Well, true.
And the best thing to do is to head for the nearest airport, which is what they did. Yeah.
Paul Brennan, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely to have our resident aviation expert beside me in the studio. It is 5:30. You are with Checkpoint on RNZ. Thank you for being with us, everyone. Coming up on the program, part 2 of our look inside the youth justice residence, where some of the country's most high-risk and at-risk 14 to 17-year-olds are sent to be made safe. Part 1 last night, an extraordinary response to that. Thank you. We would love your feedback to anything we are covering tonight. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. Lots of people already are. People commenting on Lord, commenting on the Prime Minister, commenting on Instagram. It is very, very modern, isn't it? Or you can email us, checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. But here now to do what he's officially here to do is Paul Brennan with the headlines.
Thank you, John. Air New Zealand says there was no engine fire on a plane forced to make an emergency landing in Napier Airport. The airline says one engine on the aircraft experienced surging shortly after takeoff. The intermittently rich fuel mix resulted in short flashes being seen near the engine's exhaust. The engine was shut down and the aircraft landed without further incident. Engineers have confirmed the engine was not damaged. Hundreds of New Zealand women are complaining of illness following breast implants. An Auckland woman says she suffered heart palpitations, fatigue and memory loss before she had hers removed in 2016. She says the symptoms disappeared after the implants were removed. There's growing international concern about symptoms linked to the implants. The Health Minister says mental health workers often support New Zealanders when they're at their most vulnerable and they should have been included in last year's pay equity deal for care and support workers. He says because of this, their pay rise will be backdated to last July. Workers will get an extra $200 gross for a 40-hour week. The police have laid charges over the violent stabbing of a mother and son at an Auckland dairy last week. The 16-year-old male has been charged with assault with intent to rob and aggravated wounding. He's been remanded in Oranga Tamariki care. The police are seeking information from anyone who may have seen a witness to the incident. A 12-year-old is in a critical condition in hospital after a South Auckland police pursuit that ended in a crash. Police say they tried to stop the vehicle at about 8 o'clock this morning, believing it may have been linked to a series of burglaries overnight. They say it failed, or when it failed to stop, officers followed it until it crashed into a stationary car in rush hour traffic in Manukau. A 16-year-old girl has been charged with unlawfully taking a vehicle, aggravated failing to stop and reckless driving. Those are our headlines. Our next news, sport and weather update, John, will be at 6.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul, which is about 27 minutes away. Lots of people contacting us about the Mycoplasma bovis and the situation with neighbours. And someone's just saying, what's going on with MPI? They're suggesting all sorts of reasons for why they're playing catch-up on this. And they say something needs to change at MPI. So many areas where they fall short. Cody dieback, fisheries, Mycoplasma bovis, to name several. That's from Di, but we've had a bit of that kind of comment over the past week or two. We will talk to MPI about their response to the various issues that have beset us in agriculture, horticulture and fisheries over the past year or two. That'll be next week. But before we do anything else, let's turn to business news now with Matt Chatterton. Fletcher Building, the gift that keeps on giving, Matt, at least to journalists, if not to shareholders, has announced changes to its board. It has a new chairman.
Yes, just a day after announcing it's shrinking its business, Fletcher's has named its new chairman. He is former PwC chairman Bruce Hassel. He replaces the outgoing Sir Ralph Norris. He's stepping down after overseeing a nearly $1 billion loss in the company. Hassel has been a Fletcher director since March last year. He'll take up the top position on the board in September. Other directors named today include former ASB Chief Executive Barbara Chapman, Robert McDonald, Douglas Mackay and Kathy Quinn. Our business oracle, or if we're going with official titles, editor Giles Beckford pointed out to me today that Barbara Chapman did quite well working under Sir Ralph Norris at ASB as his protege. While there has been some change at the board, there's still no real construction experience amongst it, and of course they'll have to do a better job of controlling the company's management, which quite clearly failed under Norris. So this new board has a lot to prove.
Yeah, they sure do, and there is a lot riding on this for shareholders, isn't there? Thanks, Matt. Boy. Gosh, we've covered Fletcher Building a lot in the business slot over the past 12 months or so. Michael Hill, to close its remaining 6 Emma and Rowe shops. I need a reminder, what's Emma and Rowe, Matty?
Yeah, so Emma Rowe focused on lesser quality jewellery, which the company says is compelling, but it's not the right time to be trying to crack it, so they're going back to basics, which actually, funnily enough, is a lot like what Fletcher's is doing. Earlier this year, the company decided to shut 24 of its Emma and Rowe shops and retain those 6 stores, which do sell, as I mentioned, those cheaper lines of fashion jewellery. Quitting the remnants of Emma and Rowe will cost another $3 million Australian dollars in redundancy and terminated leases. That's on top of the $6 to $8 million in cost of shutting the original 24 stores, so the cost just keeps piling up for them. It's Michael Hill's second expensive retreat from an unprofitable market this year. Let's not forget that in January it quit the American jewellery market, which costed around $5 million. So after all of this though, Michael Hill International will still have 300 stores in New Zealand, Australia and Canada after starting out as just one in Whangarei nearly 40 years ago.
Yeah, how many? More than 300 did you say?
Yes, I did indeed.
That's a hell of a lot. What happened on the markets today to end the week, Matt?
Well, to end the week, the top 50 index closed, well, you might as well say it's unchanged, to be honest. It was just 0.07% up. It's still on 8,999. The New Zealand dollar is up 0.5% against the American at 69.0 US cents and is up just against the Aussie at 93.3 Australian cents.
Matt Chatterton, thank you. Matt used to be a sports reporter. Matt, just before you go, have we still got you? You're still there? Have we got him?
Sure am.
All Blacks France tomorrow night in Dunedin. What's the score going to be, Matt?
Oh, why are you asking me this question, John? I'm in business now. I don't know sport anymore. I'm still going to pick a New Zealand result. France's best chance to beat New Zealand, in my opinion, was in the first test. Even with all these debutants, I still think New Zealand will win. Just by what score? I'd say 0-13. I'd say will be somewhere in that scoreline. Matt, thanks for being with us this week. We really enjoyed your company, Matt Chatterton, who ex-sport now, doing business and doing a fine job of it, Matt. Residents of flood-prone homes on Anzac Parade in Whanganui say the establishment of a fund to buy and remove the worst affected properties and raise others off the ground is a joke. The Manawatu Whanganui Regional Council says it's going to set aside $50,000 a year, but residents say that's a drop in the ocean. And they don't want to move anyhow. Our Taranaki Whanganui reporter, Robin Martin, who does such a fine job from this region, has more.
Aaron Scythe lives directly across from Kohai Park, and during the 2015 flood, the Whanganui River was lapping at his front door. He's the first to admit he knows little about raising homes, but he reckons $50,000 isn't going to go far.
Just really doesn't cut the costs, I don't think. I mean, maybe over 100-year periods it might get there, but yeah. I mean, what are they going to raise, half a house every year or one house a year? And there's, 100-odd houses here or something, I think?
Mr. Scythe says he's willing to accept the risk of flooding. Wayne Coles lives at number 76 Anzac Parade, one of the worst affected homes in 2015. He's a builder, and he knows at that level of funding, nothing much is going to...
Was when some of my friends from work told me, oh, we hear you guys are moving out of Anzac Parade, that Horizons have come up with a plan and they're going to move you out or raise the houses, and I didn't know. The personal touch would be nice. It would be nice if somebody came and knocked on the door. I didn't get a leaflet or anything.
Mr. Coles says he has no problem getting insurance, and he and his wife won't be going anywhere.
I look out of my front yard, I'm looking at a park. I don't look at it across another bunch of houses. I just love it. I take my dog over the park. My grandchildren, when they come and visit, I can take them over the park. And the river's right there. I mean, in Auckland, I came from Auckland, and Auckland, you've just got people and buildings, and you have to drive to get places like this.
Vietnam veteran Pike Terui is a neighbour of the Coles. Mr. Terui bought his home just last year. He says he knew the risk.
We were totally aware it was in the flood zone. It was flooded, but we bought this property because it has been completely rebuilt. So I'm a veteran, I'm retired. I have not picked up a hammer or paintbrush in this house.
Mr. Terui is also upset with the consultation process.
No one has come to speak to myself and my wife about these issues. We are only reading about them, and we don't even understand what they're talking about.
The Regional Council's boss of river management, Raymond Strong, says any house removals will be voluntary. Mr. Strong accepts the fund won't achieve a lot in the short term, but he says the council is playing a long game.
I guess this is more signalling an intent. We're really indicating a long-term strategy direction here that says it's not sustainable to put more funding into flood protection for that particular part of Whanganui. This is the best strategy. This is the way forward.
On the streets of Whanganui, there were mixed views on the policy.
I think it should really be up to the people that live there. I think it's a great deal.
If they want to build a house or live in an area like that, knowing it's a flood area, that's a risk they take.
Well, ultimately it's their choice, yes.
They should take the people out of Anzac Parade and put it into a nice park.
If they went to Shanghai, they have the Bund there, which is a huge stop bank, and it's brilliant. Tell them to get off to Shanghai.
Mr. Strong says in the future Anzac Parade could look quite different.
My ideal vision, and it might be 20, 30, 50 years' time, would be that those worst affected properties have been removed, that Kaiwai Park has expanded, so the green area is expanded, and the dwellings, the houses around the margins of that floodable area have been raised.
But that's not a vision shared by the Mayor of Whanganui, Hamish McDougall.
But that's a conversation he should be having with us, because his jurisdiction is only the floodwaters. Our jurisdiction is to live for every other day of the year that it doesn't flood, every other year that it doesn't overtop the stop banks. We have to live with that. So it's a conversation that I fully expect the District Council will be having, because it's about city planning.
Mr. McDougall says managed retreat is the nuclear option, and he's happy the Regional Council has softened its stance somewhat.
What I want to make sure is that all the options have been run down to the ground, because there are places like Memphis in Tennessee and Launceston in Tasmania that deal with a regularly flooding river by building for the river, embracing the river.
The Regional Council says it had a stall at the River Traders Market during the consultation period for its long-term plan and held 2 community meetings in the city. It also mailed a submission form to every household in the region. Of the 116 submissions that directly addressed the Anzac Parade proposal, 107 supported it and 4 favoured it in principle. 3 submitters were opposed to it and 2 didn't offer an opinion one way or the other. Hi Whanganui mo te hōtaka o te akiahi, ko Robin Martinaho.
It's coming up to 17 minutes to 6. You are with Checkpoint on RNZ. Last night we went inside Te Aureri a Te Tonga, a youth justice residence on the outskirts of Palmerston North. It's run by Oranga Tamariki, not corrections. But the children aged 14 to 17 who were sent there will almost certainly end up in jail if their offending doesn't stop. Given the coverage of youth offending of late, dairy robberies, car thefts and high-speed police pursuits, we wanted to see the places where some of our most at-risk and high-risk young people end up. Oranga Tamariki agreed with no conditions other than we couldn't identify the children or their victims. There are 4 such centres in the country with a total of 140 beds. It's not many, but the care is intensive, and the young people who receive it almost without exception have come from homes where violence, drug and or alcohol addiction issues and or economic deprivation have defined their childhoods. It's a chance to break the cycle and for many it's their last chance before they're treated as adults. Shot and edited by Claire Easton Farrelly, this is part 2 of our 2-part look at these young New Zealanders and the place and people trying to make them and us safe.
How old are you?
14 now.
How's your childhood been?
Not that great. Upside down. Didn't really have the best family that was there for me. And the person that was there was my nan. Yeah.
But even nans can only do so much.
What was your life like growing up when you were a little guy?
Family separated. They just started smoking crystal meth just to show my family apart.
Who was smoking it, your mum and your dad?
No, just my dad. Yeah, my mum just left him. Got sick of it.
And what was your dad like when he was smoking meth?
Because my dad's a patched up mobster, gang member. Yeah, my mum just didn't want that no more for our family.
Was there violence in your childhood?
Yeah, a lot of my brothers.
Visiting Te Aurere Tonga is to see into a world most of us will never know. Home is where the harm is. And if they haven't already been removed from home, many of the kids here left home when they could. And some of them ended up on the streets.
And why were you living on the streets?
My dad.
Dads are a common factor. Neglectful dads, violent dads, addicted dads, gang dads. Many of the young people who end up at Te Aurere have never really felt safe when Dad's been at home.
And have you ever felt you were in an environment where you were safe?
Yeah, sometimes. When I was by myself, yeah.
When you were by yourself?
Yeah, away, like my own time, my own personal bubble. No one could touch me because, yeah, I could look after myself.
But they can't and they couldn't, not really. Looking after themselves sometimes can involve prostitution for the girls and frequently theft, including aggravated robbery, AGS. That's often why they're in here.
When did you first start getting into trouble?
When I was about 13.
And what did you do?
Well, when I was on the streets for like a week, I was stealing cars, doing what I had to take, robbing shops and that.
And when they're stealing cars and robbing shops, they sure as hell aren't getting a formal education.
How's school?
I didn't really go to school. I've been out of school for a year now. Yeah.
A year is shorter than many of the kids at Te Aurere. And this is how the Youth Justice Residence begins the process of attempting to make them safe, putting them in a classroom. They can't go out, so the teachers come to them, and these are people charged with teaching, yes, and with pastoral care, love in a way.
Is it possible that for some of these kids, you and the other staff here are the first adults who've really cared about them, potentially?
Potentially. It does come down to, having one champion, just one person that reaches out and says, I care. I hear you. And I care, yeah.
And when they know you mean it, how do they respond?
They respond by them putting their hand out, them greeting you first, probably. One day, actually, last week, I had a pretty moving experience when teaching with one of my fellow teachers here, and a young boy called out and said, well, I didn't think he meant to call out, but he ended up saying, this class has been mean all week. That's huge. It's a huge milestone. When the public school system out there has been a place of negativity or, somewhere that they don't want to be, they're not welcomed, they're not part of the group, and then they come in here and have a moment like that, that's huge. Yeah. So when you get that kind of response, man, you can go home and feel, I did something good today. Yeah.
And seeing kids that come in with no dreams and no hopes and no ambitions to starting to have some idea about what they might like to do and to achieve in something is amazing.
It's important to remind ourselves what the children who come to Te Aurere Tonga have often been charged with.
Are the most serious of crimes. So kids that are charged with murder, rape, whatnot, they're all in here. And then you have the other group of kids who are recidivist offenders, stealing cars, theft, all that sort of thing. And this is where our young people will come in when they first arrive into the residence.
They arrive exactly as adult prisoners do, as if into a prison. If they can't get along with the other residents, or if they represent a danger to themselves, they're held in rooms that are pretty grimly like prison cells. But it's what happens when they get out that matters, for them and for us all. They either get it right and leave to live lives of safety for them and us, or they get it wrong and make more victims.
Hamish, you work here now?
Yeah, I do. As a youth worker.
And you were once here as a resident?
Yeah, about 4 years ago.
Hamish Falika-Ono is that most precious of things, a success story. He came here from a background of abject poverty.
Like, you're already on the edge from like having no food and no power and that, especially with teenagers. You get quite hungry and you sort of have to find your own way to get food.
So what did you do?
Just rob some houses for some food, just for the food, and it's sort of where it started, and then sort of got into fights a lot, just because I was already stressed and that because of the stuff that was going on at home.
He was sent to Te Aureri and found food, kindness and a sense of possibility. And when he was leaving, the boss, Carl Kowiti, said to Hamish,
"If you're good, get out and do good, come back and I'll give you a job." And that's basically what I took him up for.
Hamish became a dad at 17, and suddenly the very simple things mattered. So simple, many of us would really, utterly take them for granted.
And for me, it was just trying to build a foundation where I could eat and sleep and live comfortable. That was just my main goal.
They do want to be All Blacks and vets, of course, all the normal things children want. But the boy whose dad didn't stop him from leaving home for the streets, aged 13, who stole cars to sleep in, I asked him, "What do you need?"
I don't know, someone that will be there for me, family, just someone that will put food on the table. Yeah, wouldn't ask for much more. Yeah.
It's not much to ask for at 14. And the girl who got hidings, whose mum and siblings got hidings, who learnt violence and then became violent.
It's not a life that anyone should actually have to live.
Whose childhood has been a battle against ugliness. She wants to be a beauty therapist.
I like doing your eyelashes and eyebrows, and I like being pretty. Like, without makeup, I feel like girls wouldn't be them. I don't know, I just really like makeup.
And the boys who stole cars, aged 13, and drove fast, and whose 15-year-old mate was killed in a police pursuit. Guess what those two want to be?
Well, I want to be a mechanic. That's my goal.
You two, do you want to be a mechanic as well?
Yes.
Well, you obviously like cars, you boys.
Yeah.
Can you stop stealing them?
Yeah. Yeah, I can.
Can they? Can 14 to 17-year-olds who've so much to overcome it? If they could stay at Te Aureri, they might be able to, but they can't. We have lunch in a cafe the teens themselves run.
So, beef burger, hot chips.
Learning to cook, waiting tables, running a cash register with cash. The food is good, but the future, what does it look like? This is a youth justice residence. When they're not legally young any longer, they have to leave, and when the terms of their custody run out, they have to leave. To where? The homes that damaged them? Foster homes, maybe, although have you tried getting foster care for teens who've been prostitutes at 14, or who find their anger hard to deal with, or who've robbed dairies? Where do they go?
So the kids you talked to today, and you saw some real genuineness and real hope for their future, and we see that all the time, and then they go back into that community like you say, and we see them back so soon after.
Ben Hannafin is the National General Manager of the Youth Justice Residences. We spoke to him in a home Oranga Tamariki and Te Aureri, are now using on another side of Palmerston North. If homes like this work, this might be what happens next after the formal structure and safety of a youth justice residence like Te Aureri.
they come into residence and they get that structure back and they thrive and they love it, but then we throw them back into an environment where they lost that structure again. And to expect them to do anything other than what they've always done, it's just not working, and that's the change. That's what we're trying to work towards.
So how do you work towards that change?
Environments like this, different alternatives to residences. Residences are an environment that's around safety and managing risk. Most of the kids aren't there because of that need. They're there because we can't find placements for them. We can't find safe placements for them.
So they're in a home, but they can't leave without permission and or supervision, and they have the same level of care as children in the residences do. It's just more normal. But as always, it's about resources.
How many homes like this are there in the country?
So we're starting to build them. So we've got 4, one in Dunedin, here in Palmerston North, 2 in Rotorua.
It's a start. Outside boys do bone carvings, the chance to be good at something. Too young to legally leave school, many of them haven't been at school for years. If these places can't prepare them to live in the world, adult prison may be next.
What we know is, historically, the kids do just keep coming back, and then they get to the age of 17 and then they move into the correction system. But what we all want, communities, all partners, is a reduction in people being victims, stopping offending. That's ultimately what we all want. So it's, how do we make this the last interaction they need within our system? How do we make sure they get all the support and resources they need so they don't come back again?
Back at the residence, the car boys told me they don't want to steal cars anymore and then drive dangerously fast. But will they remember that when they get out?
Do you really know that? Do you really understand that your life is worth living? Do you really know that?
Yes. I just want to live my life. I don't want to just be coming in and out of here. I don't want to be stealing cars or anything. Just on the job.
I hope you get one.
That's it.
When I leave from here, I'm getting a course at Taratau Trust. Yeah, well, I hope to. But if they can't take me, then I'll probably ask for help, go where I need to go.
Good luck.
Thank you.
One by one they tell me their dreams, small things, but are even small dreams attainable for these kids?
Good luck.
Thank you.
I hope you become a beauty therapist.
Thank you.
Thanks for showing me around, and thanks for being so honest and open with me.
You're welcome.
The oldest child I met was 17, most were 14 and 15. I asked Carl Kuiti, the boss here, how often their families visit them. For many, it's not often at all.
And are there kids whose families never come to visit them?
Yep. Unfortunately, probably the majority of our kids don't get regular visits.
What happens to these children when they get out? Where do they go next? If we get it wrong, we do know the answer. More victims than a life in and out of adult jail. We know that. The question for us all is, how much do we care about getting it right?
Because communally, this is our duty of care. This is what we have to do. If we want to see any difference, we have to step up as a society and say, I care. Yeah, be brave, be bold. Everything Papa Moana Jackson has been telling us for years, 30 years plus. Papa Mason Jury, all of these people who have been telling us what we need to do. We know, we have the answers. We just have to be bold and brave. Yeah.
Sarah Tapania, one of the teachers at the school, at the Youth Justice Centre. The story was cut and edited by Claire Easton Farrelly, and the whole thing, it was 2 parts, the whole thing will go up online over the weekend. Just before we go to the news, a real change of pace. A gorilla known for her extraordinary sign language skills has died aged 46 at her sanctuary in California. Koko was said to have been able to use and understand hundreds of English words. She had a global following and is described as an icon for empathy between species. This report from the BBC Science reporter, Paul Rinken.
Koko the gorilla was born in 1971 at the San Francisco Zoo, but at the age of 1 she was taken under the wing of an animal psychologist called Francine Patterson, who began teaching the ape sign language.
How about eye? All right. How about ear? Right, okay. You're doing real good, Koko.
Over time, it was claimed that Koko had learned more than 1,000 symbols and was able to understand 2,000 words of spoken English.
Very good.
Dr. Patterson formed a close bond with her pupil.
Koko has a a very strong sense of self. She feels she's important. She's got a strong ego. She's playful, can be very silly. She's got a good sense of humor. She can be very stubborn, very willful.
Footage of Dr. Patterson playing with Koko reveals how gentle the 280-pound ape was with those around her. The royal portrait artist Richard Stone was commissioned to paint Koko in 2006. He later described meeting her as the most amazing encounter of his life.
Well, looking into Koko's face, one can sort of see her life's experience. You see her intelligence. And I must add, I've never had a sitter before that will break away from the sitter, so to speak, and ask me to tickle them.
Some experts were sceptical about the extent of Koko's abilities, but she highlighted how much we have in common with the great apes, which are threatened due to poaching and habitat destruction.
That report from the BBC, bringing us to 6 o'clock.
RNZ News at 6. Good evening, I'm Paul Brennan. Air New Zealand says a misfiring engine was the reason an Auckland-bound plane with about 50 people on board had to turn back to Napier just over 2 hours ago. The plane landed safely and passengers are being booked on other flights. Our Hawke's Bay reporter Anusha Bradley is at the airport.
Passengers say they heard loud noises coming from the left engine about 5 minutes after takeoff. One says he could see flames and smell smoke. He says everyone on the plane was shaken but calm. He says the crew told them the left engine had been shut down and they landed back at Napier shortly after. Air New Zealand says there was no fire, but uneven burning of fuel caused the engine to backfire, similar to a car backfiring. It says the plane, an ATR 72-500, is designed to operate safely on one engine, and pilots are trained for scenarios like this. At Napier Airport, Anusha Bradley.
A leading plastic surgeon says there's no scientific evidence to support claims that breast implants are making some women sick. Hundreds of New Zealand women have joined an Australasian support group on Facebook for what they're calling breast implant illness. There are 44,000 women in an international group. They say they've suffered similar symptoms like memory loss, fatigue and poor concentration since having implants. But the president of the Plastic Surgeons Association, John Keneally, says researchers in the 80s and 90s found implants are not to blame for such things.
It's human nature to look for a reason for anything that happens to you in life. A woman will look and say, why am I different from another woman? Oh, I've got breast implants, therefore they must be the cause of any of the other differences that I observe.
John Keneally there of the Plastic Surgeons Association. A government department that underreported its spending on contractors by millions of dollars says it has always acted in good faith. The Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment told a select committee it spent $73 million this way last year. Figures released today show it actually spent $95 million. The ACT leader David Seymour says the blame lies with the artificial cap the National-led government put on core public service employee numbers.
I think it's a great shame that the Select Committee was absolutely misled. But let's just remember the mischief started with this silly arbitrary control on the number of people working for government.
David Seymour says instead of removing the cap, the Labour-led government should cut back on public service functions. Jacinda Ardern and Clark Gayford will spend a second night in hospital following the birth of their first child just over 24 hours ago. The Prime Minister's office says everyone is happy and doing well in Auckland City Hospital. In a social media post today, Ms Ardern has thanked her midwife for her incredible work and for making her macaroni cheese, which she was craving. Outside the hospital this afternoon, a hospital cleaner told RNZ everyone was excited about the baby.
She's joined our team, like mom's team, and we're all of us happy for mom and baby girl. Of course, it's pretty cool. Baby is always cool, and hopefully they will have more babies here. It would be great, and we just only wish them all the best.
The family is expected to go home this weekend. The European Union's retaliatory tariffs on more than $3 billion worth of US goods come into force today. Most of the goods targeted will now carry a tariff of 25%. This report from the BBC's Kevin Connolly.
It would be hard to find anyone in the EU who shares Donald Trump's view that trade between Europe and the United States is so unfairly balanced that the Europeans are ripping off their American partners. There'd be still less support for his view that trade wars can be good and easy to win. Donald Trump's tariffs on European steel and aluminium will now be answered with a 25% levy on a carefully selected range of quintessential American products, from motorcycles and jeans to orange juice and bourbon. Prices for consumers should go up very quickly and won't come down again until a transatlantic trade deal can be agreed.
Kevin Connolly reporting from Brussels there. A Wellington man said to be the mastermind behind a methamphetamine ring will spend at least 7 years in prison. Stephen Blance was sentenced in the High Court in Wellington today to 14 years and 6 months for possessing and selling methamphetamine. He was also sentenced to 10 years in prison for conspiracy to sell the drug and 1 year for unlawfully having a gun and receiving stolen property. The sentences will be served at the same time. Judge Justice Collins says Blance was considered the mastermind behind the ring, a sophisticated operation uncovered in Porirua in April last year. Ultrafast broadband has arrived early in Dunedin. The Communications and Digital Media Minister, Claire Curran, has announced the completion of the network's infrastructure today, 19 months ahead of schedule. She says about 47% of the city's residences are already connected, which is higher than the national average. It's 6:05. On to sport now, with 4 debutants in the All Blacks line-up for the third and final test against France. There are bound to be a few nerves, well, for some anyway, but don't count midfielder Jack Goodhue among them. Goodhue and flanker Shannon Frizzell have been named in the starting line-up, while lock Jackson Hemopo and first 5 Richard Mo'unga are set to come off the bench. Coach Steve Hansen says helping the newcomers relax is a key part of the lead-up to the test, but he admits Goodhue's brimming with confidence.
I don't want to use the word overconfident, but he's got a lot of self-belief, and it's justified. You know, it's not a cockiness or anything like that. It's just an inner belief in who he is as a person, and I think that reflects in how he plays too.
Steve Hansen, Argentina's coach Jorge Sampaoli, has taken the blame for their shambolic 3-0 World Cup loss to Croatia, seeking to deflect criticism for a terrible goalkeeping mistake and a poor performance by his captain Lionel Messi. With 2 wins, Croatia are through to the next round, while Argentina need to beat Nigeria in the last pool match to have any hope of advancing. Tonight, Brazil look to get their first win of the World Cup against Costa Rica. Nigeria play Argentina and Serbia play Switzerland. That's the news.
Tomorrow morning, legendary investigative reporter Seymour Hersh, who's just published a memoir of his career. Not that his career is over, he's only 81 and firing on all cylinders. The man many regard as one of the best violinists in the world, Stefan Jakiv, plays some Bach for us. And Professor Martin Nussbaum on the utility, or otherwise, of anger. Join me, Kim Hill, tomorrow morning from 8 on RNZ National.
We're funded through New Zealand On Air. Here's the short forecast now through to midnight tonight. Tomorrow night. Northland, a few showers in the north, clearing then fine. Strong southeasterlies easing. Gisborne to Waitan Upper, mostly cloudy. I have a feeling, John, this forecast is out of date.
Is it?
And I don't know if it's advisable to carry on in case we put people wrong.
Right. What was the general theme of it? It's not bad this weekend, is it?
Well, let's just say it's not bad. There's a big high over the whole country, and it's going to be fine, probably.
Yeah. Was that your general recollection of what you read at 5 o'clock?
No.
Right.
That's what I say when I don't know what it is.
Excellent.
I think I saw it on the news last night, the big H.
Yeah.
You know. But it's risky to go on if it's wrong.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
Don't know how that happened.
Yeah. It's uncharacteristically lovely in Auckland, isn't it? How long have you lived in Auckland for, Paul?
3 days.
Right.
And it wasn't nice on arrival.
No. When I first moved up here in about 1998 or 1999, I think it rained solidly for about 6 to 8 weeks. And I just thought everyone living here must be insane.
Yeah.
But
I
just
hope
get
that
used to
doesn't
it.
happen.
No, it does, bro, it does. Any month's beginning with J except for January. Oh, no, that's the right weather, Pip's saying. So I've just sped through it. Chatham Island's cloudy with a few light showers. Canterbury, Otago and Southland fine, apart from low cloud or fog hanging around in some valleys.
We're saying this morning, and that's not right.
Obsolete.
Yeah. Oh, we'll never know.
Yeah, we won't. Anyway, nice to have you with us, Paul.
Yeah,
Paul
nice
and I, you and I went to primary school together for a while.
I've got a school photo.
How are we looking?
Very young.
Was I in a cardie?
Probably. I'll dig it out.
Okay,
we'll put it up.
Excellent. Thanks, Phil. Have a lovely sunny weekend.
I will, thanks. You too.
Let's go back to the baby. Laura Ladern says the first picture of her granddaughter brought tears to her eyes and she can't wait to hold her and see what she's like. The Prime Minister's parents spoke to media today from the Nelson home as they prepare to fly to Auckland tomorrow to meet their granddaughter for the first time. Jacinda Ardern is tonight spending her second night in Auckland City Hospital after delivering her healthy unnamed baby girl just over 24 hours ago. The first Instagram photo of the family showed the baby wearing a hat knitted by a supporter, a shawl knitted by Clark gave its mum with a blanket gifted by Naitahu. Today, nurses described the unnamed child as very alert and one hungry baby. The Prime Minister's parents said they couldn't wait to meet their third grandchild.
Absolutely. Laurel's going up tomorrow and I'll go up next weekend. Yeah, so we're both really looking forward to it.
And have you had much of a chance to talk to Jacinda and Clark at this point?
Laurel has.
I had a few minutes last night, yeah, after she, while she was feeding it, yeah, it was lovely to talk to her. Yeah, she sounded very relaxed and excited. It was neat.
Got any picks for a name at this point?
Well, you know, it's been bandied around the family for quite a while and everybody's put in 5 cents worth, but that's going to be a choice made by Jacinda and Clark, and we respect that. And whilst we might have given them lots of suggestions, the final choice, of course, is always going to be down to Mum and Dad.
What were some of the suggestions? Any from the siblings as well?
Look, there's such an array of them. I'll leave it to them to be able to decide what they're going to settle on.
Do you think Clark's going to make a good stay-at-home dad?
Actually, I think he's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I do.
I think he'll do a wonderful job. He's been planning, reading, looking forward to it, and so you know, he's up for all sorts of challenges, and I think this will be just another challenge that he'll meet head on and be able to manage very well.
He's so easygoing, I'm sure he'll handle it.
Mm. They're feeling very comfortable, very happy with how things have turned out. A beautiful baby girl from the photographs that we have seen. A very active baby that kept her awake during the night. All of the things that parents get to experience. So Jacinda also gets to experience that along with Clark. So it's I'm sure that it'll be, as time goes on, they'll get more used to the effort that it takes to raise a child.
From the photos you've seen so far, any feeling as to which of the two the baby looks like the most?
No, it's just looked very alert. I was really surprised that one of the photos she sent after it was born, the baby was looking up at Jacinda and it looked like she was in awe of her. And I thought I couldn't get over how alert it was just after being born. So I'm dying to see it and hold her and just see, yeah, what she's like. But yeah, she looked very alert.
And mini Jacinda?
I don't know yet.
And you have plans as grandparents? Do you hope to be quite involved with the upbringing of the new granddaughter?
Oh, we hope so. We hope that both sides of the family have you know, the opportunity to help with the raising of the new baby. You know, I know that you know, we've had lots of conversations about it and talked about where we can help and where we can fit in. And both sides of the family are enthusiastic about offering what support we can. And we look forward to being able to make a contribution. As Jacinda said, you know, welcome to our wee village. Well, our family is a bit of a village in itself, so it's going to be an exciting time for us.
What was the moment, the feeling like when you first saw the baby and you heard the news?
Oh, I was so excited. It brought tears to my eyes. I was relieved and excited because I know how she's always wanted to have children, so I'm just thrilled to bits.
Very proud grandparents speaking earlier today. It's coming up to 13 minutes past 6. Thank you for being with us Friday night on Checkpoint. A man said to be the mastermind behind a methamphetamine drug ring and his right-hand man have been sentenced today. Stephen Blantz and William Birkland, both members of the Mongrel Mob, pleaded guilty to a raft of drug charges early this year. Today they were sentenced in the High Court in Wellington. Our reporter Laura Dooney was there and joins us now from the Wellington studio. Hi Laura, lovely to have you with us live on Checkpoint. What happened?
Yes, so this afternoon Stephen Blantz was sentenced to 14 years and 6 months in prison. He'll be there in prison for at least 7 years. William Birkland was sentenced to 13 years and 3 months for his role and will spend at least 6.5 years in jail. Now, both of these men were facing a raft of charges for the possession and supply of methamphetamine. They were operating out of Tawa, so in sentencing, Justice Judge Collins said they caused a huge amount of harm to the community there. That's the wider sort of Porirua community. Now, the convictions of these men came as part of a wider operation that police named Operation Walnut. In April last year, they seized drugs, guns, cash, stolen vehicles, and more than $2 million worth of assets. And that led, obviously, to these convictions and the convictions of some other people. 2 more people are still facing trial for these charges. In the sentencing, Justice Judge Collins says while the group was under police surveillance between October 2016 and April 2017, the men bought 15 kilograms of meth worth about $5.25 million and sold it, earning themselves a profit of more than $1.5 million. He says both men were at the extreme end of their offending. Now, as I said, they were dealing out of a house on Coat Street in Tawa, and while they were being watched, 700 people came in and out of the house to purchase the drug.
Holy moly, that's a hell of a lot of people, Laura.
Yeah, and that house, it had reinforced steel doors, a sophisticated CCTV system, and at times a drone was used as surveillance. The pair also had a wide network of informants to keep them posted on police activity. Now, during the sentencing, the defence lawyer, Blance's defence lawyer, Elizabeth Hall, said to the judge that imprisoning Blance wasn't going to solve the meth problem in the country. She said his offending began as an addiction. The same was said of Birkeland by his lawyer, Christopher Stevens. Mr. Stevens said Birkeland was very sorry for his offending, and now that he's clear-headed, he's sorry for the impact it's had on his children. He described Birkeland as a respectful and careful father whose offending, like Blance's, was motivated by his addiction.
Thanks, Laura. Just before you go, and we used to people making statements like that, but they did both plead guilty, didn't they? So that's that is material. But just before you go, what do the police say about the sentences? Any comment from the police or the prosecution?
Yes, the Police Detective Senior Sergeant Tim Leach says police are delighted with the outcome. The sentences handed down reflect the harm that the pair were causing with their offending. He says that result came through the determination and skill of the police, and he mentioned that police do know who's dealing methamphetamine and other drugs in the region. So he sort of issued a bit of a warning that police are keeping an eye on them and they will be caught.
Laura Dooney, live from our Wellington newsroom. Thank you very much indeed, Laura, and have a great weekend. Tens of thousands of women around the world and some in New Zealand say their breast implants are making them sick. Just over 2,000 people are part of a New Zealand-Australia support group on Facebook, but whilst the women claim they're suffering from a breast implant illness, a medical expert claims the scientific evidence proves otherwise. Who's right? Crystal Abbey Lenders investigates.
29-year-old New Zealand woman Nikki Janes has put her future travel plans on hold after spending $15,000 to get her breast implants removed. Nikki says she underwent breast augmentation surgery in Thailand in 2011, but after several years she began to feel sick and was having a 2-hour nap every day.
When I exercised, I found that was the worst. It would feel like my blood was boiling, and I'd have like pins and needles in my hands and feet, and my lymph nodes would get really swollen and they were really sore under my armpits. I just thought, what's wrong with me? I'm getting old way too fast. Something is definitely not right. And there's like shooting pains everywhere, like it would just be random. And yeah, the closer I got to getting them out, they just started getting worse and worse.
Nikki says both her implants were removed because they'd ruptured, but she believes most of her symptoms were because of the implants themselves. And she's not the only one. 33-year-old Auckland woman Micaiah Simmons says she had her implants put in when she was 21. She had them for 10 years before they were removed in 2016, following symptoms similar to Nikki's.
The worst ones, I guess, were anxiety, heart palpitations, fatigue. Like I was really, really exhausted all the time, which was unusual for me because I was used to working really long hours and that sort of thing. So that was quite hard for me to deal with. I had really bad memory loss and like brain fog. So, I'd sort of sit down to like do some work or something and literally couldn't remember what I was meant to be doing for the life of me.
But the medical community does not recognise the link between breast implants and the illness. John Keneally, president of the Plastic Surgeons Association, says scientific evidence doesn't support it.
It's human nature to look for a reason for anything that happens to you in life, and that's the normal thing. A woman will look and say, why am I different from another woman? Oh, I've got breast implants, therefore they must be the cause of any of the other differences that I observe.
But Nikki says the fact some of her symptoms disappeared after having her implants removed showed the illness was real.
Physically, I feel amazing, incredible. Probably 90% of the side effects is gone. I don't have bloating. I don't have all this puffiness. I don't have to nap anymore. The lymph nodes have gone away. I don't have pins and needles. Pretty much everything is gone.
ACC figures show that between 2013 and 2018, 234 claims related to breast implants were received. Of these, 155 were accepted and 79 were declined. John Keneally says there is no scientific link between breast implants and illness.
The finger has been pointed at breast implants for 30 or more years in relationship to this, and a lot of research went on in the late 80s, early 90s, trying to establish whether or not any of these symptom complexes were causally linked to breast implants, and science failed to find an association with them.
But Nikki hopes her story will encourage others to come forward with a call for more research.
I think some people think that we are deluded, to be honest, and people are trying to find something to blame it on. Like, yes, some things might not be related to the breast implant illness, but when you look at everyone having the exact same symptoms, I just think it has to be related, surely.
For Checkpoint, Crystal Landers.
It's 20 minutes past 6. An Indonesian court has sentenced to death an Islamic State-linked cleric for masterminding from his jail cell a string of deadly militant attacks across the world's largest Muslim-majority country. Judge Ahmed Zaini said Aman Abdurrahman had been proved guilty of carrying out terrorism, but as the ABC's Adam Harvey reports, he may not be executed for fear of creating a martyr.
Aman Abdurrahman is an Indonesian cleric who preaches intolerance. We must hate every worship to anything but Allah. We must hate all laws and regulations other than Islamic law. Aman Abdurrahman is the founder of an extremist group behind the awful suicide attacks on churches in Surabaya in May. The cleric has been in jail for years for earlier terror-related offences, but online his sermons live on. Terror analyst Sydney Jones says while Aman Abdurrahman was in prison, he managed to get messages out to his followers urging them to move to Syria and Iraq to live under ISIS rule. Hundreds of Indonesians went to the caliphate.
He was one of the first people who said, yes, this is the caliphate we've been waiting for. He urged all of his followers, and there were many, to also join ISIS and swear allegiance to al-Baghdadi. So some of his writings, especially on targeting police, for example, have been cited by terrorists for their actions as being the basis ideologically for what they wanted to do. In that sense, Aman Abdurrahman went far beyond Abu Bakr Ba'ashir and was more radical and probably had a greater influence, certainly among the people who supported ISIS.
4 innocent people died in a bomb and gun attack that was the first in a series of blasts and shootings committed by Abdurrahman's admirers. Policeman Denny Mahiu was badly injured in the Starbucks attack. I would say he's the provocateur who encourages others to do terrorism. He orders them to do attacks, although he does not do them himself. Authorities got serious about Abdurrahman after that attack and finally took away his ability to get messages out to his followers. He'll shortly find out whether he'll be sentenced to death for the Starbucks attack. Even if the judges order that he be shot, authorities in Indonesia may not kill him and instead leave him on death row. They know that the only thing more dangerous in Indonesia than a hate preacher is a hate preacher who is a martyr.
That's the ABC's Adam Harvey. in Jakarta, 23 minutes past 6. If the idea of Fido ending up on the dinner plate alongside the salad and mashed potato fills you with horror, you are not alone. But there are parts of the world where consuming dog meat has been common. In some parts of Asia, a reducing number of areas, eating dogs is traditional. That's changing, though, as the BBC's Jonathan Savage reports.
In a semi-derelict building in the Chinese city of Yulin, dozens of dogs jostle for space. One appears to be hit with a stick and dragged across the room. These scenes were recorded by the Humane Society International, which campaigns against animal cruelty. They want to end the Yulin Lychee and Dog Meat Festival, 10 days in which residents feast on the animals to celebrate the summer solstice. The society says the dog meat trade is inhumane and unhygienic, pointing to videos of dogs caught with wire lassos, transported in tiny cages and slaughtered with metal rods. Some Chinese people are against the festival too. Zhang Huahua complained to authorities in Yulin that the event infringed environmental protection laws.
I think it's a social evil to treat our loyal friend and companion animal like this. A companion animal is not an animal for economic means, nor is it a food-producing animal.
In Yulin, there is defiance. Resident Wang Yu argues that eating dog is no different to consuming cattle, chicken or pork.
You see scenes of bloody dog slaughter online, but the killing of any animal will be bloody. I hope people can look at this objectively. The festival is just a popular custom of ours. I think popular customs themselves cannot be right or wrong.
While that debate continues in China, there's considered to be a gradual shift away from the tradition of eating dogs in South Korea. Recently, a city court in Bucheon convicted a dog farmer of killing animals without proper reasons. A member of parliament is also trying to introduce a bill that would effectively ban the killing of dogs for meat. Korean dog farmers, meanwhile, are campaigning themselves. They want dog slaughter to be explicitly legalised and licensed. They say they'll fight to protect both their industry and their traditions.
The BBC's Jonathan Savage there. This is going to be an education for some of us. This is an increasingly popular sport. It's called Kabaddi, and we'll see a New Zealand women's team travel to Malaysia to compete at the International Challenge this weekend as a warm-up to the World Cup. New Zealand have competed at 3 World Cups, but this time have recruited some of the toughest women in the country to vie for their first title. If you're wondering, like many of us, what Kabaddi is exactly, our sports reporter Ravinda Hunia went to train with the team to, well, bravely find out.
The Indian sport of Kabaddi requires a combination of strength, speed and agility. Often compared to the game of bull rush, it has no equipment, just a strategy. Touch your opponent without getting touched yourself, which I found is more complex than it sounds. This New Zealand women's Kabaddi team was formed only 5 weeks ago and will compete at the International Challenge this weekend in Malaysia. And former Kiwi Ferns player Kathleen Kerimete says this tournament is a step towards a bigger goal.
We'll cap at the end of the year for circular kabaddi, so that's the outdoor version. But our hope is to go over to Singapore, put our best foot forward and be able to be invited back to other tournaments.
The side has historically had a strong Kiwi Ferns rugby league influence, including former captain Serena Fiso, while others have gone on to become Black Ferns. Now, with the rules of this tournament changing from outdoor to indoor like the pros, Kerimete has gone a step further, recruiting local Brazilian jiu-jitsu champions, wrestlers and mixed martial artists to impose added strength.
Those kind of backgrounds, they're used to being in a one-on-one situation, they're used to being at close quarters and having to semi-fight their way out of situations, which it's good for the rest of us that haven't had the luxury of being in those sports. It brings a lot of experience and different dimensions and skills to the team.
One of those is former Samoa Manusina rugby player Sally Koko, who is fresh off winning gold at the New Zealand and Pan-Pacific Jiu-Jitsu Championships.
I found the transition quite natural. Been doing MMA for just over 3 years, so cage fighting, competing at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and wrestling. The transition is very similar to wrestling.
To qualify, the team must be associated to a Sikh temple or governing body, which manager Tara Singh Benz takes care of as well as coaching. the cultural aspect to the sport being just as important as the sport itself. Although the team have performed a traditional Māori haka at past tournaments, here the team are learning bangara, a traditional Indian dance which they'll perform on the world stage as a sign of respect.
Each federation, so there's a 2 federation in New Zealand, so they got each got a 6 team. They're doing own tournament. Part of my side, our organization, we have only 1 team. We get invited in both federations. Where we invited, we go. We play about 2-3 tournaments a year.
During the Kabaddi Challenge, New Zealand will face teams from the host nation, India, England, Taiwan and Hong Kong. Mo te hōtaka o te pō nei, ko Ravinda Hunia aho.
And Ravinda's story was shot and edited by Claire Easton Farrelly, the same brilliant Campbell woman and editor who shot and edited our 2-part series inside the Youth Justice Residence just outside Palmerston North. It won't be a 2-part series when it goes online this weekend. It will be one long part, about 25 minutes. Do watch it if you missed it. It is important that we work out how to make these kids safe for themselves and for all of us. Thank you for your feedback on it. Lots of lovely feedback and we are really grateful. Lots of it very empathetic and kind. Checkpoint is a production of RNZ News, but we have a small number of permanent staff. Pip Keane, Catherine Warbridge, Bridget Burke, Michelle Cook, Zach Fleming, Kelvin Samuel, and our great sound crew, brilliantly led by Jeremy Ansell. On behalf of them all, thank you for being with us. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back on Monday at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. And Air New Zealand ATR is forced to turn back to Napier after engine trouble, but the company says uneven burning of fuel caused the engine to backfire and there's no damage. A leading plastic surgeon says researchers in the 80s and 90s found implants are not to blame for making some women sick. The ACT leader says the Labour-led government should cut back on public service functions instead of restricting spending on consultants. And an Auckland hospital cleaner has told RNZ everyone is excited about the Prime Minister's baby girl, and Jacinda Ardern has joined their team of mums. Our next news and weather will be at 7.
G'day on Country Life. This week it's cuts on at 7 a.m. for Tasman goat farmer Tracy Hay.
From start to finish, by the time I've done plant wash and everything, it takes about 2 hours.
For this and other rural stories, tune in to Country Life. Friday night, after the news at 9.